Easiest way for any type of musician to actually save money is by actually budgeting out how much you plan on spending on either recording an album, a song, or even a movie shoot. More often than not, people get caught up in the idea of this is going to be cool, but they don't factor in how expensive it can get to shoot on site, the equipment, if they require staff. There are a lot of questions that go into something simple as I want to do a song. Well, are you writing it yourself? Are you going to have a backup artist? Are you going to be licensing a sample from someone? You know, there are a lot of accounting questions that go into every little aspect of the music industry. So number one thing I notice is people don't budget and they underestimate how much something is going to cost. As you get bigger, is you always want to make sure that you are working with people who represent your brand well. And what I mean by that is, as you get used to working with different producers and such, the costs for reshoots and for re-edits start dropping because they actually start to understand your sound. Biggest issue I also find, especially with new upcoming artists, is overspending on bells and whistles. So they might overspend on software that's might not needed for auto-tuning. They might overspend on instruments. Truth be told, very rarely is there a big difference between a $250 guitar and a $5,000 guitar. And especially when artists are just starting out, the 250 sometimes makes sense. You just need a workhorse instrument that can last you a long time over something high-end and prestige. Obviously, do not ever overspend more than what you're actually pulling in. Or if you are going to overspend, make sure that you are making that income elsewhere. Meaning, to even chart this first tip, you have to understand how much you are making and spending in a given year. This can either be done by budgeting, or I prefer an actual profit and loss sheet where you're actually recording the expenses that are going in and out. But it takes you actually understanding how much is coming into your operation, how much is going out. And I'm not just referring just to the music component. This can be a side job that you're taking to kind of finance your music career, because more often than not, starting off is very expensive. Very rarely do people get signed to a label where they'll give you an advance. More often than not, people are hobbyists, so they're doing it on the side. You have to make sure that the income that's coming from what is at first a hobby is enough to make it a full-fledged career. Another thing that most artists, for financial information, is realism. Do not expect to make 10K within the first month of an album being dropped. More often than not, you won't see any money for 3 to 5 years because of how royalties are now going. It's impossible to kind of turn a profit just off recordings. You now have to kind of go out there in the world and do some live touring, sell some merch on the side. Really what I've seen and observed, especially when it comes to producing and making music, is more often than not, those lead into tours, or that leads into you getting more private deals, which really start drawing in the money. That album or the recording itself is not really valued much unless all you do is produce music all the time for other people, so not for yourself. So if you become a big-time writer, producer, backup artist, it might be more profitable for you to work on 40 to 50 other people's music and sounds, because that's where you're going to draw your money from. But that does take you recording and understanding how you're making money in the music industry or how you're going to cover those expenses. Understanding the legalese that goes into any agreement, but that's more so talking with a lawyer or even talking with a professional accountant to kind of go over deals before you sign them. Once you sign them, it's kind of too late. More than often than not, people are actually always going to give you time before forcing them or having you sign something. So always take something to a lawyer or an accountant to kind of read over to see how much you're going to make / how much rights you're giving up or how much you could potentially make. They do not keep their receipts. And what I mean by that is, when you're buying something, if you don't keep your receipt, more often than not, you might be buying something cash. You might be buying something via e-transfer, and or just another method where it's kind of hard not to kind of fully see where your money is flowing out. And because you're not holding on to receipts, you won't remember in a year's time, 2 years' time, what you're spending money on. especially when it comes to reporting your taxes. But that's just a different problem in and of itself. It's just holding on and tracking income expenses. That's very hard for most people to do because it's not trained into them. Once you start doing that, that helps you both, generally speaking, for yourself and in the music industry. Another tip I could give people is open your mail. And what I mean by that is you have bank statements coming your way, you have credit card statements coming your way, you have McKillen long bill that's come your way because you're leasing equipment or renting equipment, but you got to open your mail so you can actually see what's coming in. Sometimes I know credit cards look scary, especially because you might always be in the negative, but you have to know if you are, because that allows you to adjust your plans and start doing things that will take you out of being in debt. Because more often than not, I observe artists being in debt because they just don't pay attention to how much things are costing them. They always think the money will make itself back. That is not true. You have to work at making the money back. It just doesn't make itself back. Most important one, get yourself a good bookkeeper or accountant, namely one who is able to talk with you. And what I mean by that is they bring the conversation to a level that you understand, and they're not doing it in a way that makes you feel uncomfortable. Granted, sometimes the information might be more complex than what you're used to, but as long as they're taking the time to explain things to you, that is the best type of person you want supporting your business growth. The music industry is currently a breadth of good bookkeepers, good tax preparers, and good accountants. There are a select few individuals who specialize in this, so it's actually a pretty open market for any aspiring bookkeeper, tax preparer, or accountant to come in. More often than not, most bookkeepers I've encountered here are musicians who have no bookkeeping experience, meaning they don't know how to reconcile a bank account. They don't know how to use the software. If you are doing an accounting course or a bookkeeping course or an entrepreneurial course in high school, they will provide you the basic skills necessary to kind of get your foot into the door. If you go to college for bookkeeping or accounting admin, that would easily have you ready for this, because I came into this field not as a musician, but as an accountant. I was studying to be a full-fledged accountant, but then afterwards I got pulled into the music industry because they liked how organized I was, as well as how proactive I am in looking at numbers and understanding things, but more importantly, bringing them down to a level where even the artists can understand. And what I mean by that is not that they aren't smart, but that sometimes most accountants function in the high esteem level because they have the university education. They are talking down to their clients when, truth be told, they should be bringing the information down to a level the clients understand and then working the client's knowledge upwards, because very rarely do people teach anyone how to read financial statements, why receipts are important, why I need, monthly reports. And if I don't explain to you something why I need it, then obviously you're not going to do it correctly. But that's my fault as a person seeking information. So for anyone getting into this field, it's a learning process in how to take the accounting mindset, bring it down to a level where the artists understand, and then afterwards increasing the knowledge base of your artists. Because I've now hit a point with a lot of artists where, because I've taken the time to actually speak to them, they know precisely what I'm looking for, and they always have that information ready for me. They understand how to do touring properly. They understand where they're making money, where they're losing money, and then most importantly, because they have their books and everything in order, they know how to go for grants from the government to kind of get them more money so that way they can grow as artists. So you become half accountant, half teacher, all problem solver. And you'll be very surprised how often you will receive a new problem that is not even accounting related, but because you are the most organized person on the job with all the information at your fingertips, you become the go-to person to actually solve a problem.